Welcome to another episode of Strong Place. I'm Ayo Johnson, Executive Director of Mental Health America of Central Carolinas. And I want to encourage you to please share this episode. We are trying to get the word out to end the stigma around talking about our mental health. But also, if you could do us another great favor, hit that like button and also subscribe. It helps us, and it doesn't cost you anything. So thank you in advance. And today on this episode, I'm really excited to have Zahn Patin with me. Zahn is the lead of the Wonder Group, a strategic consulting firm focusing on economic inclusion strategy, supplier diversity, and organizational transformation. Welcome to Strong Play, Zahn.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I didn't read your whole bio because I really would love for you to tell us, all about the Wonder Group and what you do.
The Wonder Group is an exciting venture for me as a serial entrepreneur. What we're doing is really trying to close generational wealth gaps and economic disparities with a four-prong approach. So we start with strategies that help to elevate leaders with training and development programs to help them to be better, to create a legacy and to create a better environment for their workforce. And then we help them to identify workforce solutions through workforce development programming, as well as help them to get opportunities to contracts through supplier diversity strategy. And then we think about generational wealth and legacy through tax strategy and asset management. So really cool stuff to help to kind of build the Legos together so that we can see the real transformation and long-lasting change in African American and other minority communities that we're seeing the disparities kind of continue systemically.
So, really interesting thing. Before I became executive director of MHA, and actually since November of 2011, I owned, still do. I actually sunsetted it a couple of months ago. A consulting firm called Wonder Girl Consulting. And
Oh,
when I was doing it full time before I joined MHA, I used to go to some like networking events and seminars that the city of Charlotte was hosting. And I went to one in particular, and the Wonder Group had helped to collaborate it. And I was like, and so when I checked in and they saw the name of my company, they thought they thought it was with your company. And they were like, "Oh, you work with Wonder Group?" And I was like, "The Wonder Group." And so I remember I said, "Oh, this is gonna be very interesting because they're gonna always think Wonder Girl Consulting and the Wonder Group are connected." So when I was
that's
reading your
awesome.
bio, I'm like, you and I had just talked earlier, a couple of weeks ago, but I was I never put two and two together until I was really like, preparing for this episode. So I am so excited to meet you. I think that day you were kind of like just running around. I never got a chance to meet you one on one, and that was over 2 years ago. So
Always running around at some event,
right,
basically.
right. So I'm really interested, like, to know, and we're gonna get into like our mental health discussion, but how did you get into supplier diversity? How did you get connected with the city of Charlotte?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. My background is actually in program management and strategy. So I started in IT program management and M&A, procurement, supply chain strategies, and all that fun stuff.
Mhm.
And as I was working in that role more on the corporate America side, I saw some opportunities there to be a part of some of the better firms. And what the leading firms were doing in procurement at that time was developing supplier diversity programs. So I presented that to our leadership there, and we were able to kick off a program where we had about 32% participation in a Fortune 100 company. So
Mm.
pretty cool results there, lots of partnerships and lots of learning and collaboration from a national level. And then I left to do my own thing, do some service work with the youth. And then consulting kind of came to me as folks who knew me in the marketplace were like, hey, we really want you to come back and do some more strategy. So
Mhm.
I came back as a consultant at a firm. And then that's kind of what brought me to Charlotte, working with the healthcare system here, and got back into supplier diversity strategy there, and kicked off the Wonder Group. Were relaunched in 2020, and I've been working with the city, the county, some federal clients, MBDA, things like that, to be able to just continue to do the work. And the cool thing about doing this work is I'm into it, whether or not I'm getting paid or not, right? I really see it as ministry and service, third generation PK entrepreneur, all those things. And I just see like developing people as our work and service to humanity. So when I was in between companies and deciding should I go on my own or should I go back to corporate or what's that move going to be, um, I felt God say, like, if you love it, do it whether you're getting paid or not.
Mm.
And in my residence lounge at my building, I started this MBE roundtable conversation on Saturdays with some Danishes from Amelez, and we just talked about strategy. And really just that I just was like, I can pour into these folks and do teach what I can teach and give what I can give and connect what I can do without a contract. And if I can prove that to myself that I'll do this whether or not a client is paying me to do it, then I think I'll prove it to myself as well as I'll show folks that I'm really serious about this. And since then, it's grown into something magical. And I love the Wonder Group. The name comes from Wonderland, Lewis Carroll's book about Alice. And this, as we talk about Women's History Month and just all of the big stuff around that, these magical places like Wonderland and Oz were created because folks didn't see that women could be powerful outside of those spaces.
Mhm.
And so in Wonderland, Alice was a rock star. She was a warrior. She could get things done. And so that's the space that we're creating there. And we're trying to create that space for more leaders and entrepreneurs in Wonderland.
I love it. I love it. And actually, how I ended up calling my consulting firm Wonder Girl Consulting is I used to work with someone years and years ago, and he used to do so many like different things and do them really well at a high level. I used to always call him Wonder Boy. And then when I had to come up with a name for my consulting firm, and back again, this is 2011, so we're talking, 13 years ago, I was like, I don't know. And people always tell me, like, what can't you do? And I said, I guess I'm the equivalent of what he was.
Mhm.
And so I just came up with Wonder Girl, like really on the fly. So I think there's some connection there. And as we are having this discussion for Women's History Month, um, I'm super proud of just the work that you're doing. I'm a huge fan of it, and you're definitely making history. So thank you. I can only imagine there's a couple of things that you said there, right? But serial entrepreneur, third generation PK. I used to work in full time ministry, and I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I know that effect with those combination of those things, or just those things separately, but a combination of them. Um, I'm pretty sure that you have some really interesting mental health stories. So tell me your mental health story.
Yeah, like, it's rooted in faith. I
Mhm,
can say, like, my dad is a faith preacher, I guess that's the term people call it,
mhm,
and my grandmother actually founded our church, and she believed, when no one would believe. She did revival, miracle services, healing, all that fun stuff, and so I grew up in that environment marinating in, if you say it, you believe it, to speak to things and to look at situations and speak life into them. And so having that as a foundation was great, but at the same time, like, as I grew up and matured and I would see things that seemed out of order, out of line, I didn't have good boundaries.
mhm.
Because being in ministry, you're serving others constantly, you're constantly forgiving way more than is probably healthy. And you're taught to restore people quickly, to forgive, and to kind of restore these relationships so quickly that there's not a lot of healing or a lot of reciprocity or teaching those boundaries. And I think it kind of got me to a point where probably in 2012, I was dating someone and I was getting engaged and things. And he wasn't the nicest person. But I was like, well, we're a team, go team go. I only really was familiar with marriage, not really taught to date. And so I wasn't sure when to say, "This is not good." I was like, "Let's work on this. Let's figure it out. Let's go to counseling. Let's do anger management. Let's" and in a healthy situation, I would have been told, "Run for your life." But I wasn't taught that. I was
Mhm,
taught, "This is family. This is commitment. And so thankfully I've had a lot of helpers along the way, from therapists to Reiki healers to shamans and all the stuff. But my therapist at the time said, "This is the time where you decide if you want to marry this person. You're not married yet. You can go." And I was like, "Oh," and it was like freeing, so that I could leave and I would really be okay and I wasn't a bad person for making that decision. And from that point, I kind of discovered codependency, boundaries, some of those challenges that I never discussed before because we don't talk about those things. It was go pray about it, go forgive, ask yourself, did you pay your tithes? Did you do this? Maybe this is why this is happening. And so my therapist at the time was able to give me some tools I didn't know I needed.
Mhm.
And I realized that my faith, or not necessarily my faith, but just the teachings, I took them so to heart
Mhm.
that I didn't have another toolbox. So, what I feel like mental health has done for me is to give me a toolkit that I can partner with my faith. And so I'm much stronger from that position than just with faith alone, because when life is happening, you're like, "Well, God, I think I'm a kind person. I think I'm okay, but this isn't showing up like that, and I pay my tithes or, whatever. Or I don't have money. I can't pay my tithes, but what's going on? What's here?" And it's like, that's not nothing like that is happening. Like, just you have those exercises, lots of affirmations, lots, and not to jump too much, but we were taught affirmations. Like I said, my dad talked about speaking things into existence.
Right.
And I would see that in church, people say, "Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored," but I knew they were broke and busted and complaining all the time. And I'm like, that's interesting. And like, how can we find more integrity in these
Right.
things? So I kind of was like, affirmations weren't really my thing. I'm like, I won't say it unless I believe it.
Right.
And I didn't discover Louise Hay, but I stumbled upon Louise Hay and You Can Heal Your Life. And she talks about the affirmations and looking in the mirror and saying these things. And if it feels icky when you say it, then maybe it's because you don't believe it yet. And I'm like, I don't believe I love myself. Like, 'cause I'm saying I love you. And I'm like, I don't think I do. And I had
Mhm.
to wrestle with, oh, I really am not confident. Because I would get so offended if someone said, "Oh, you're insecure, or you're not confident." And
Mhm.
then I was like, why is that triggering me? Oh, it's true. There's something there that I need to like dig into, and those tools kind of helped me to do that.
Mhm.
And so then I started to learn bridge affirmations, which is what can you believe? Like, so if I don't believe I'm rich or wealthy, I can believe I'm capable of earning money. Lots of people earn money. Lots of people earn lots of money. Lots of good people earn money. Lots of not so great people earn money.
Right.
So money isn't that big of a deal. And then slowly I'm able to, like, connect to, I'm a hard worker. My clients love me. They love working with me. We do good work. God provides provision for the vision. If I have a clear vision, the funds will come, money comes. Like, those things, I was able to kind of, like, bridge it. And as an even entrepreneur, as someone supporting entrepreneurs, sometimes tell people, "You can have all the hard work, but it's about what's here and in
Yes.
here." And clearly you have faith, whether you have a faith practice or not. You're courageous enough to leave a steady check to think you could do it by yourself. You have faith in something.
So you made a couple of really interesting points. So much that I want to respond to. I want to talk about like the faith side of it, right? And those things. I feel like as women in the church, we get kind of bombarded with certain messages. You talked about forgiving maybe too many times. Um, and we know the Bible says, you forgive what, like 7 times 70.
Mhm.
So you start to think, or 70 times 70, you start to think, um, I'm just always supposed to forgive no matter, what someone does to me. And I think there's a difference between forgiving, which is a spiritual principle, and people say, well, I forgive, but I don't forget. Okay, if you don't forget, then you didn't really actually forgive.
Yeah.
But that doesn't also mean to not have confidence that God doesn't want us to be in certain situations. And I think a lot of times, especially women, we mix up the two.
Mhm.
I can forgive you and literally put 100 miles between you and I. Doesn't
Mhm.
mean I don't forgive you, but I also know that God um, has given me a sound mind,
That
right? And my sound mind says, this is not a good situation for me.
yeah.
And I relate to so much that you said because um, I was in, similar situations, similar relationships where I kept thinking, you can love them into being better. You can keep doing the things. We internalize it so much. We try to make it about ourselves. If I just do this better, if I just do this different, he'll respond differently. He'll love me more. And when you were talking about the affirmations that you were saying in the mirror about loving yourself and paying attention to what you feel, and you were like, that's checking something in me. I'm not actually believing what I'm saying to myself in the
Mhm.
mirror. That's when I would think that that deeper work has to come in.
Mhm.
One of the things I feel like has helped me is I just truly believe that God loves me equally as much as he loves the richest person, the poorest person, more intelligent, more educated, prettier. Like he loves us all the same. He really doesn't look at all those attributes. So I'm really glad that you were able to lean into that space. Do you think your third generation PK, right? Do you think that now you're able to marry the tools that we learn in church with the tools that we learn in therapy? Because I don't believe it's one or the other. I feel like we need both.
Yeah, I think that we are for sure. In my family, I'm breaking that chain where I'm bringing those tools into the conversation.
Mhm.
And I think I'm thankful to have parents that are open to to knowing those limitations. I had a moment back in 2017. I didn't know what depression was. I saw those commercials of the people walking with the balloon and all of this stuff. And I hit a moment where I normally am up at 4:45, and I could not get out of bed, like, physically could not
Mhm.
move, and I called my dad, and I was in Texas, and he was in Louisiana, and, I was like, "I can't move. I don't know what to do." And he was like, "Huh? What do you mean?" And I was like, "I just can't make myself get out of bed." And he said, "Call your doctor." And I called her, and she put me on Lexapro, which at that time, I didn't even know, what it was and all that, but it was a step I needed to take in the journey, and I was thankful that they were able to be like, "Hey, you need this, we don't understand what you're feeling right now,
Mhm.
but, we respect it and we wanna support you." And so having that, I think, opened the reality that sometimes God wants us to pray about things and also use the tools that we have been given, and then they were, like, just opening that conversation around mental health, and now I think it's much more common to in our discussions about boundaries and about codependency and narcissism and um, different behaviors that we can identify that we may have ignored.
Mhm.
And even like going back to the sound mind thing, I always say, like, well, God gave us these superpowers of power, love, and sound mind.
Mhm.
And we are derelict in our duties of using sound mind a lot in the faith because of that over forgiveness, because we're complicit. And
Mhm.
there's a point where you are complicit with this behavior,
Mhm.
and so, being able to recognize those moments where if you know someone is not safe for children
Right.
and you wouldn't let your child go to their house, but you still let them around you. What is that? What is that really saying about the I love myself?
Right.
What is that saying about a lot of things? Sometimes we can extend the love to others. Like we can say, I don't want someone talking to my niece like that. Oh no, she needs to leave that job. Her boyfriend is disrespect. Like it's very clear when we see it.
Right.
But when it's happening to us, we're like,
So
oh well,
true.
that's just how they are.
Right. Right. And God has called me to forgive, and God has called me to love him through it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that whole verse about God not giving us a spirit of fear, but a power, of love, and a sound mind. And um, I think often we think that God gives us things for other people, but especially if we have self-esteem issues, we don't realize that He's also given it for us, right? He's given them to us to protect ourselves, to be able to make decisions, to be able to hear Him clearly. So. Yeah,
Mhm.
I love, what you said there. Let's talk about, um, entrepreneurship, right, and our mental health. I interview a lot of entrepreneurs, and we all seem to have very similar sor stories, right, or
Mhm.
feelings. It looks really glamorous from the outside when you say, "I work for myself." You know what I mean? "I make my own hours," and people think you work less and you're, like, chilling, and having 3-hour lunches, whatever, and they don't realize that most of the time when other people are sleeping, you're up,
Mhm.
you're either crunching numbers, you're doing, a proposal, you're doing whatever. Let's talk about how that entrepreneurship journey affects your mental health.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, for me, I actually started my first company when I was 9.
Oh.
Called Peaches and Cream Party Throwing Company. Had stationery and everything, and I grew up in my parents' businesses. So my dad's a super entrepreneur, all my family members really, but
Mhm.
we own a funeral home in New Orleans. So I grew up making coffee for bereaved families, and filing things and doing death certificates and learning the business, learning how to make deposits, learning how to do the things, but I also saw what it is to run a family business, then not a lot of accountability, not a lot of boundaries, and kind of seeing that I was like, I can't wait to grow up so I can get a 9 to 5 government job. I didn't know what a government job was, but I heard like it was easy, and I wanted that. It was better than whatever this was.
Right, that's what you wanted.
Yes. And I'm like, it just wasn't my path. So I, went through the corporate cycle and then decided, okay, I'm gonna save this much money and then I'm gonna be ready. And God was like, there's never a good amount of money in your bank account where leaving a steady check every 10 days is a good idea. So just jump. And I jumped. And so I realized very quickly, like when I started handing out all these paychecks, my first deal was a nonprofit that we did for kids, a summer camp. And I was paying the camp counselors and hustling up the scholarship money and getting donors and just doing all the things and teaching the kids and cooking the food and yay, go team go. And on Fridays, they just want a check, like they just want their money. They want this. And you're like, I'm so passionate. I love this. Don't you love this? They're like, I'm about to go.
Right.
Like it's
Right.
a job. And I think that was the first real reality check, sorry, moment for me where I had to talk to my therapist again and say, they're not as excited as me. And she's like, this is your dream. This is a job for them. So I had to make that distinction that they will never be, they may love and support and want to do all the things for you, but they can never be as excited about your dream as you.
Mhm.
You are the steward of your vision.
Mhm.
So that was a big thing that helped me to understand humaning and the people that I'm working with
Mhm.
differently. But what I also realize is I'm not going to get a bonus check and a pat on the back anymore because I'm the top performer. No one even cares. They got their check. You don't have one. And guess what? Next, like when you're the boss, no one says, great job.
No.
No one is there to say,
No.
"Oh, here's a sticker for not going crazy today." Like, no one's doing that. So she said, "You're gonna have to find other ways to celebrate,
Mhm.
to prove or to honor yourself." And I was like, I wasn't taught that. And what I realized I saw in my family was just work, 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 work. But there was never a, wow, we did it. And it's weird to celebrate death because our business is, because you don't want to celebrate death, but you're celebrating revenue, but it's a weird situation, right?
Yeah.
So now that I'm in my, business, I've I I love what I do. So that really makes it not feel like work, but it
Mhm.
feels like work on my body. 12, 15-hour days.
Mhm.
What I have learned about boundaries is really important, but I also had to learn I'm gonna lock in for 3 years. God told me, "Give me 3 years and I'm gonna bless this. You need to sow some seeds. I need to teach you some stuff." And so what he taught me was that you got the stuff. The resilience is
Mhm.
the key.
Mhm.
And resilience is that thread that takes the courage to the next level where when something happens, you keep the faith and you're able to keep flowing, and continue to have the vision. I think, he's really taught me through this with my therapist, with my Reiki, all the stuff. Like I was coming out of a lot of narcissistic job situations. And it had really chipped away at my self-esteem as a top performer, as a leader, all kinds
Mhm.
of things.
Mhm.
So I've been recovering from imposter syndrome big time.
Mhm.
And so even this opportunity to share here, I'm like, this was probably the first time I felt like I'm okay. I actually have something to share, I believe, with humanity,
Mhm.
and I'm honored for this moment and available to this. But maybe a week ago, it might have been, I don't know what they want to talk to me about, you know?
Listen, that
And
imposter syndrome is cyclical.
oh,
It doesn't stop.
it
It
just evolves. It shows up differently.
it shows up differently.
Yeah, I got a desk about a month ago, 2 months ago, an L-shaped desk that I'm just like, "Oh, I have a desk. It's nice. It's L-shaped. It's by the window. It's all the things." And I felt so uncomfortable that the other folks on my team's desks weren't L-shaped. Like, are they gonna think I think I'm too much? Are they gonna think I'm so it's this constant thing that we're dealing with, the insecurities,
Mhm.
we made it, but did we really make it? Are we just started making payroll without having to cry and pray over it? You know, like, can we keep this going? Like, so it's so many things, little bitty things. And I talked to some of the people I teach about rejection
Mhm.
and how, like, God had to tell me, like, you need to get comfortable with rejection and not see it as a worthiness issue. So it's
Right.
like going back to that
Ooh,
mirror work.
that's good.
Like, yeah, you submit a proposal. Yeah, you didn't get it. Next, this is called business. If you don't master the cycle of that emotion faster, you're
Mhm.
going to get stuck because you're submitting 200 proposals every year, right? And you really can only do three. So if you got them all, we'd be in another
Right.
problem, right? So God is like, I'm teaching you discipline, and also, the more people see your name, it's advertising. Whether you win or lose, people now know your resume. They have this packet about your company, see things differently. And he just started showing me, honestly, we talk about seed time, harvest, and all that a lot in
Mhm.
the word. And what he said is, yeah, you can have a cash crop like some marijuana, or you can have a ranch where you have cows and you have horses and you have chickens and you have apple trees and you can have an orchard. He's like, I'm going to teach you how to cultivate some stuff. And that's going to take a different skill because the struggle of entrepreneurship, of getting there, the journey of the stress and I can't sleep and we're going from 20,000 to 60,000 and ooh, taxes and ooh, S Corp and all
Right.
those things is different when you're in the promised land or closer, right?
Mhm.
It's a different skill set.
Right.
So I don't need to learn how to pray and cry over payroll. I need to learn how to get a better accountant to help with other things.
Right.
Um, so we have to be like open to that and not use the same tools. And so I've learned so much about having good friends, but also knowing to stop oversharing with them
Yeah.
because we are speaking things. And so even my griping and venting, the universe doesn't know the difference between that and saying, bring me some more of that chaos. You like chaos? Let's do some more
Right. But
chaos.
that's what you always wanna talk about. So, that's obviously what you're comfortable, that's what you want.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna keep yeah, that's so really true. It's something that I've been telling people a lot lately. I don't know why, but it's the kind of the path that God has me on in the last few weeks about, there's no change without challenge. And, when you're in a growth season within in business, nonprofit is just a business model. So when tell people like I've been in this game 25 plus years, I've been in business 25 plus years. It's a business model. Um, but that no change without challenge, when you start praying on or asking God for growth and it expands your territory, listen, you better get ready for the challenge because and something you said is so key about God teaching you resilience, right? That muscles grow because we give resistance to it. Um, he's teaching us that grit muscle, right? That resilience muscle, but it's painful. And oftentimes I think that people they look at Instagram reels or TikTok reels and they see people go viral. They don't really know the stuff that
Mhm.
came before that. Most of the time, you didn't just get there overnight. You weren't there's no such thing as an overnight sensation.
No.
There is the part that the public didn't see before you became the sensation, and that's not overnight.
Mhm.
Most of the time, that's decades.
And sometimes even if it is overnight, it's not sustainable because
Mm.
you haven't learned the skills to cultivate the land. And I
Oh,
think
that's true.
that's what
That's
happens
good.
sometimes with some of the entrepreneurs that are out here. They like say, "Oh, I heard this industry was booming, so I got into it." Well, did you fall in love with it? I think there's a book that talks George Washington Carver where he says that when you fall in love with something, it tells you all its secrets.
Mhm.
And so, like, if you're really into construction, what do you know about it? How many conferences do you go to about construction? Are you just out here bidding on projects? Are you learning the
Mhm.
skill, the craft, the industry? Are you
Mhm.
falling in love with it? And if you're not, you're gonna get bored quickly, and when the money's not coming, you're gonna falter from that vision. But if you know for sure that this is something you're called to, you can sustain it. You can have that faith to say, like, "Okay, maybe it doesn't look like I thought, but I'm gonna stick with this and keep it."
That's really good because I think that that's how I keep finding my way back to nonprofit. So when I was doing Wonder Girl Consulting full time for that year and a half, in between my last nonprofit job and an MHA, I still found myself always wanting to support nonprofit leaders, which is how I started doing executive coaching and doing like fractional COO work for nonprofits because I fell in love with nonprofit. And then people often ask me like, how did you get to MHA or how? And I always say that I did find MHA. MHA found me, and it was a relationship that I didn't know that I needed,
Mhm.
right? But I'm so glad I said the word relationship because I want to make sure that we talk about the synergy of how we repeat certain negative behaviors, right? And when we're not in a mentally healthy space, you said something about narcissistic employment spaces. And you said earlier about narcissistic romantic
Mhm.
relationships. And those two things oftentimes really do line up. We will choose um, the wrong place of employment and choose wrong or stay in places. I would say not choose the wrong place of employment. Stay in places of employment that don't serve us and stay in relationships that don't serve us because we feel trapped. You
Mhm.
can either feel trapped, like you don't wanna leave the job because you need the money. You're
Mhm.
not in love with it, you need the money.
Mhm.
You don't wanna leave a relationship because you think you're in love with it, but really what you're in love with is the companionship, um,
Or the memory.
right, or when it
Mhm.
used to be good, or, or you're in love with the idea of being in a relationship because you don't wanna be the only single friend
Yeah.
in your group.
There's definitely a pattern there
Mhm.
because it's a mindset of unworthiness, and I
Mm.
had to even get over the defensiveness of, "I don't believe I'm worthy of a healthy relationship." And whatever that was, I had to dig through lots of layers of that. Hypnosis is very helpful. After therapy, I went to hypnosis because I was like, "I need a faster resolution." But,
Therapy was taking too long.
yeah, I was like, "Therapy has helped me to identify the problem, now I need to go fix it," and hypnosis has been really very fast for an accelerated healing, honestly, on those things. But it's the pattern of finding folks that, validate that unworthiness. So they make you prove yourself.
Mm,
They make you work really hard for things. And I think, honestly, going back to the faith, we are taught it's better to give than to receive, not even looking at that whole scripture in context.
ooh,
And so when we are taught to be overgivers and we become martyrs in every area of our lives, and we
mhm,
think, well, this is going to help us get into heaven. This is the way God wanted it to be. And we have to break that lie because God's like saying, "You're victorious. I told you to take dominion." And here you are saying, "I'm just going to hope that one day they're nice to me. One day they'll realize I'm really here to support them." And it's like, that is the opposite of the power, love, and sound mind. That is the opposite of taking dominion. That is the opposite of loving yourself because you can't love your neighbor as yourself if you really hate yourself.
right,
So what you're proving is we like have to unravel so many pearls from that strand of pearls to realize like we're okay.
Mhm.
We're so worthy, like you said, no matter what. And God took me on a journey of unconditional love in 2016. And he's like, I'm going to teach you what unconditional love is. You don't have to come to church and do the things and pay the things and whatever for me to love you. So I'm going to teach you how I love you with no conditions. And then 2 years ago, he took me on a journey. He said, now I'm going to teach you how to love with under any condition.
Hmm.
So no matter what your environment it's looking like, I need you to know to learn to regulate your emotions. It's time to regulate. It's time to stay the course.
Mhm.
And I can take you far if we don't keep having this emotional roller coaster. But we can't be doing a praise dance every time a check come on time. Like this can't be a miracle. Like because and I tell people this because God told me straight up one day, like I was like, "God, I need a miracle." He said, if you're in business and getting paid is a miracle, close today.
Ooh, and that was a word from heaven on high, because that is so true.
Yeah. I
That is
was
so
like,
true.
so this is
If you
supposed
need
to
a
happen.
miracle for a client to pay you,
That
something's not right. But your business model is probably a little off.
Yeah,
Right.
something is broken.
Right.
And so I was like, okay. And then I started to get more comfortable with, yeah, this is supposed to happen. Like
Right.
you do work, you invoice, you get paid. That's the cycle of business. Moving on, God works in cycles, God works in order. So that's the order of things. When
Mhm.
that isn't happening, something is out of order. And
Right.
you have to be able to check those things. And so my whole mental health space really is about the spiritual space of checking things that seem out of order.
Mhm.
And when I'm experiencing, tension in the workplace, my team maybe not getting along or understanding things, being moving forward with the vision the way I'm thinking that we're moving forward, I
Mhm.
have to take a step back and say, okay, like I just did this for Christmas, like 4 days away from a laptop. Thankfully, my niece locked it up for me, where I could just reconnect to what we're doing. And I asked for direction, and I was given the direction to train the team, which is so elementary. But he was like, "You've been so busy working that you aren't training them the way you want them to be trained." So now I'm doing that.
Mhm.
I'm training 2 hours every Friday. We do a different topic because if I don't, who's going to do it?
Right.
He gave me the vision and I recognize the stewardship that is my responsibility.
Right.
And so the steward, just like in the garden, you're pruning. So if something, some behavior is out of order, who's gonna check it but you? Only you know that.
That's good.
So having those boundaries for myself, having the clear vision for my business, the clear vision of my purpose,
Mhm.
it allows me and empowers me to be more confident when I'm saying, "Hey, we're gonna stop what we're doing today. We're gonna train on this topic because I see lot of little things that are out of order,
Right.
and that's on me because
Mhm.
I didn't train you to do it the right way.
Right.
So let me train you to do it this way, and then we can set some order,
Right.
and now we can have accountability, and now we can have boundaries. But I can't do that when I'm, like, "Don't you see my vision? Don't you understand? Can't you read my mind?" No, they can't.
Right.
Say the words, write the
Right.
things, do the things. We still have to be in order too.
God sent that message to me today and through you, so thank you for that. I'm gonna take that to heart because I think he's been dealing with me with something similar. Before we wrap up, it's Women's History Month. You're a woman making history, but I want you to share with me, who was a woman not related to you that you feel had an impact on you? You don't have to have known them, right? But who was a woman that made history that really sparked something in you?
Hmm. That made history or made an impact or both?
Both. Or I mean, either one.
Okay.
Who's the first woman that comes to mind for you?
My old manager,
Okay.
Susan Ray. So shout out to Susan. She is a strong, strong leader
Mhm.
and super intelligent, super bright in lots of rooms where she was the only woman in the room. And she brought me into those rooms and she trained me. She gave me some confidence that I didn't have. She would see my eyebrows going, what is happening here? And she'd say, Zahn wants to say something. And I just appreciated the guidance and the training that she gave and the space she created for inclusion,
Mhm.
for women, for a voice that was generationally out of place. A lot of times I was the youngest person, I was the only African American person. And, um, and she gave me a platform in a corporate space to evolve. And I think as a woman now in leadership, I think that that's part of something I wanna take with me, that I plant that seed in others, that we can create those spaces for other women and help to pour into folks so that they can grow and evolve, and in spaces where they're normally hushed and shushed and unseen. So I'm excited to kind of bring that to life.
That's good. Thank you. And thank you for being with us today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I would love for you to just, share how people can find you. What are your social media handles, and anything that you have coming up that you want to share?
Sure. I am a millennial that is not into social like that, but my company is. So we are at The Wonder GRP on Instagram, and you can find us on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at Zahn Patin on LinkedIn. And coming up, we have a really exciting project we're working on in Charleston, South Carolina, and we are working on the Blueprint for Economic Impact Summit in Charleston. That will be at the end of March, actually March 13th and 14th, to get more minorities, small veteran-owned businesses engaged in data center and hyperscale work in that market. That's a growing multi-billion-dollar industry that lots of firms are going to be able to grow from. So excited to be a part of that transformation.
Great. Thank you. And thank you again for being here. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Strong Place. I'm Ayo Johnson, Executive Director of Mental Health America. And don't forget, please hit that like button and subscribe. Until next time.